morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for PCCS's Empower Hour. My name is Alyssa D'Agosto.
And I'm Kevin Roman.
And we're here today to save our services. Today, we're going to be at a rally where people from all over the Staten Island community are coming together to save our services for the disabled community. So with us today is our CEO and Executive Director, marchioNNe of PCCS. So Chris, thank you for joining us today.
Sure.
And we're here to talk to you and ask you questions about why we're here today. What is the purpose? What is the mission? What are we doing here today?
Well, I'm a lot older than you guys, so I've been doing this, unfortunately, rallying, fighting for equality, for justice, for people with disabilities. In this case, it's people with developmental disabilities. This community, which consists of children and adults on the autism spectrum, people with Down syndrome, has been hit by what we call budget cuts, meaning the supports and services that they get, they're funded by New York State, they're funded by Medicaid, and they're being cut, so to speak, sliced. And what happens is people get less. When you get less, you struggle to survive. Our community is not accessible. That's why people with disabilities need supports. They need accommodations. Some people say it costs too much to make our communities accessible, to make our world accessible. Well, if you're not going to make it accessible, then people with disabilities are going to need supports. And yes, they cost money.
We're here today to oppose the funding cuts that are happening throughout New York State and I'm sure in other states to a variety of different services that support people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. These range from their housing subsidies and what helps them live independently in their own apartments to the supports and services and direct support professionals, DSPs, that support them to be more independent and help achieve their goals.
And I know that to do advocacy, but also to gain access, it's messy work. It ends up that you have a group of people, a large group of people, because around the world there's over 1 billion people who are disabled. We're constantly fighting for people that we care about. They're our children, they're our brothers, our sisters, they're our friends. Now, we're kind of angry at Governor Cuomo. Recently, he just, with a stroke of a pen, he instituted something called the 20% withhold, which means 20% of the money that goes to support people with disabilities has been held back. It may very well turn into a cut, which means it will never be replaced. If that happens, people living in apartments, getting housing subsidies are at risk. People living in group homes are at risk. We don't know where they can go. If you're cutting from both ends, or more than both ends, because there's many different services that are going to be impacted by this, where do people go?
It means something different for everybody. So depending on what service or what support you get, that depends on how you're going to be impacted. So for example, if you are someone who is living in your own apartment and you utilize what's called a subsidy, it's called an individual support subsidy, and it is a state paid service that helps you pay for your rent when you're living out on your own. If you are in that experience and you're getting those services, you now are going to have to pay 20% more of your rent than you had to pay before with almost no notice. So, we're going to experience, if these cuts continue, we're going to experience a pretty large housing crisis for folks with disabilities. And shelters are not prepared to support them in the way that they need to, and families, not all families have the resources necessary to help support everybody within their family to stay and living at home.
Many years ago, 33 years ago to be exact, Governor Cuomo's father, Mario Cuomo, closed down the Willowbrook State School, an institution which housed a little over, at its highest point, a little over 6,000 people. They were treated inhumanely. Medical experiments were done on them. People died at the hands of doctors and nurses and caregivers, and parents were putting their children in there because they were told to put their children in there. We don't want to go back. That's what this means. We don't want to go back to those days of Willowbrook that Governor Cuomo's father bravely shut down, did the right thing. But when you start cutting, and actually I shouldn't say start because this cutting has been going on for many, many, many years. I've been doing this work for 30 years, and probably about 25 years ago, I've seen a significant decrease in the supports that people can get.
It is going to be impacting a lot of our services, a lot of our children, and a lot of our families, specifically to family reimbursement respite, and also to OTPS, which is other than personal services. And these programs basically, allows families to kind of put up the money first to then get reimbursed for the services. And those services look like, paying for internet service, which also allows us to do telehealth services. We have families that need extra supports in caring for their child. So that's going to impact the families, financial hardship. Are they going to be able to kind of put up this money? And, currently, we're kind of paying it out, but with those withholdings, we're not going to get it back. So it's going to be us rolling things out, that sort of thing. So it is an overall problem. It affects the agency, it affects the children, it affects the families. And we need those services for them. This is how they get by. This is how they're included in the community.
And so if you are getting services such as community habilitation, which is a support worker either coming into your home or meeting you where you are, in either an individual or a group setting to help you achieve whatever it is you're working on, those services might stop. They might become less. So right now, if you're getting 10 hours a week of support, that might look like 5 hours a week of support if these cuts continue. And ultimately, agencies might have to close because that's how severe these cuts and impacts are. And that means that folks will have less options of where they want to get services and less agencies advocating for what they need.
Very scary. It's very scary, I'm sure, as a person receiving services to worry. Is my staff going to be here tomorrow? Am I still going to be able to live in my apartment? Am I still going to be able to live in this group home with friends that I've been living with for a long time? Am I going to be able to go and visit my family at their home? Am I going to be able to come back when I do go visit them? Is my services still going to be there? If I'm still living at home with my family, am I still going to be able to get the supports I need to go out into the community, to go shopping, to go to the library? Many able-bodied people take these things for granted. When you're disabled, you have to do a lot of figuring out how you're going to get places. And yes, that costs money. So we need to do the right thing. And we need to realize that with the stroke of a pen, he needs to, turn it around, turn it upside down, and erase what happened here. Because it's just not going to work.
So Chris, with that said, what can we do as a community? What can we do to make these changes and really help and advocate for this?
We can do what we're doing right now. We've got a bunch of people together, just us here alone, our community at PCCS. We have dozens of people that gathered this morning. We got our power breakfast inside, which consists of donuts and bagels. We're gonna eat up and we're gonna get going. We're fired up and we're gonna go meet dozens and dozens of more people, self-advocates, their parents, other professionals who advocate so hard, who've become accomplices. And what do I mean by accomplices? That we're taking action. We're not just behind a computer sending in an email to Governor Cuomo or the other legislators. We're actually meeting with them in person, well, in Zoom person for now. But and days like this, because this is the thing, if these services, these supports are restored, we have a tendency to relax and sit back. We can't sit back. We have to radically change the way our society values people with disabilities. And that takes work, that takes advocacy, that takes efforts, that takes having hard conversations with people you wouldn't normally talk to about these things, about disability. And that takes bravery, because it is an uncomfortable conversation to have, but it's a necessary conversation to have, because disability for most of us is a fluid identity. We go in and out of it. for those who are born with a disability, it's pretty much a static identity. That's why we need to have accessible communities. And we can't stop advocating and fighting and talking and doing.
I think it's really important to note that this rally is not the beginning or the end of any advocacy efforts. It is just a piece on the wheel, right? Like, we have to continue these efforts in an ongoing way constantly. So joining your local developmental disabilities council, which here in New York City, every borough has its own. Other states, sometimes they have it statewide. But we have the Staten Island Developmental Disabilities Council, and there has been a variety of different educational sessions. There's an advocacy committee, there's a self-direction committee. There's a variety of different ways to get involved that will keep you up to date on all of the information and how you can continuously stay active. I think another thing is really reading and absorbing the information that you're getting, maybe from the provider agencies that you might be getting services from. I know sometimes, even here at PCCS, we send out tons of information, and we know sometimes it's too much, but it's all stuff that's really important for people to know. So really getting engaged and investing in the fact that if we don't stay involved and stay on top of this, the field as we know it and the supports and services that help people be independent are all going to change.